Here you are, all yours.
Perfect. Hello, everyone. Welcome to other event of the Architect Community in Madrid. We will be talking about the art of the diagram for architects, but really for everyone, because this is a very necessary tool to share our ideas and much more. On this occasion, we have a great guest, Matthew, an important reference in the Salesforce ecosystem and expert on this topic and a lot of other topics too. And later he will tell us more about his career. And thank you very much for joining us today, Matthew, for your time. Very appreciated. And
thanks for inviting me.
Thank you. Who are the community leaders? My partner, Bárbara García, she is solution architect, really person passionate about technology, but specifically Salesforce. And myself, Sara Hernandez, solution architect and Capgemini. I'm very fan of the Salesforce ecosystem. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And now let's start talking about the art of diagramming with Matthew.
Okay, let's see if we can share first test.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, it's good. Okay, so you got full screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. And I'm going to do my best to not lose my voice through this because I'm got one of those man colds. They're the worst kind of colds, aren't they? So I can't see you now because all I can see is one screen. So do shout if there's anything, any burning questions. So well, let's see how we. Okay, so I got lots I can show you. I guess we'll go for maybe 40 minutes or so, and I'll take a pause and we can take some questions or a discussion. So my name is Matthew Morris. My job, I'm Salesforce Innovation Director at Capgemini in the UK. I've been in Salesforce ecosystem since about 2009. I also lead the London Admins user group as well, so a big community fan. Here's a little bit more about me, and I think that this is not like my greatest hits. This is more actually how did I come to be talking about diagrams today? Why is it that it's something that I've become associated with? So my career before Salesforce was lots of interesting stuff, but not cloud stuff. So I started right at the beginning of the internet. There were no PCs in the office. Only the manager had a PC. Everybody else had terminals. And then lots of things happened. .NET happened. Java happened. The web happened. So I had a background in all of that. And then about 2009, I saw Salesforce for the first time. And this was before Trailhead. This was before a lot of other things as well. So it's really a very different time, and Salesforce was a very different platform back then. So we did a first project, and we really liked not only the product but also the ecosystem that was growing around it. So in the city where I live in Bristol in the UK, we started a user group. And got to start to meet lots of other people as well around the ecosystem. Then I did some certs. I went to Dreamforce and really kind of got into Salesforce more and more in a bigger way. So previously my background really was more of a developer role. And then in the job that I had, I was owning a boutique consultancy. We were doing consultancy work, and then we were doing Salesforce consultancy work. And I started to engage more around solution architecture, what we call solution architecture now, I guess, and system architecture, and started to sort of dig into those problems with Salesforce. Around the community, I started the London Admin user group around 2014. And then 2015, I think, is where my role in the Salesforce world really took off, or really got some traction. So I was recognized as an MVP. Salesforce MVP. This is also the time when Trailhead launched. So I have an original Trailblazer hoodie. It's a little bit gray now, but it's an original. And also within my work, I was moving more from small projects into more enterprise roles, and really kind of taking on that that role of an architect. And this was really the time when I started to create diagrams. I had the need to create diagrams as a way of engaging more with the stakeholders, to help to tease out what it was that they needed, but also explain to them, this strange thing called Salesforce, which didn't work exactly like maybe some of the systems that they were used to before. And these were tools that I was using for myself. And then I got into a conversation with a Salesforce MVP who was producing some videos for Pluralsight. So we recorded a video for Pluralsight, and then I arranged with Salesforce for that to be released for free, so that it could be included in the Trailhead training. And then in 2009, I also partnered with Gemma Blizzard on YouTube, doing some live solutioning and diagramming, and really sort of drawing that together. So more recently, and then that's really where the sort of the diagramming from a presentation point of view left, and lots of things happened in the world. And then more recently, I dusted off the presentation and updated it with some of my more recent experience. First at London Schooling in 2022, and then at a few other places since then. So that's really a background about me and how I came to be doing diagrams. I'm not the first person to do diagrams in the world, that's certainly for sure. But I did have the need to create a process to do it in a rapid and efficient and repeatable manner. So that's what I'm going to share with you over the next short while, and give you some of those pointers, and show you some examples. Really interested to hear your opinions as well around this. So we'll have a look at extracting, structuring, validating, and communicating requirements, and how diagrams can be used in that. We'll look at the 4 key diagrams that I think that you need. There are other ones as well, but I'll tell you what the 4 are, and why they're so important. And then we'll look more widely at some sequences and some capability diagrams and some processes as well. So the kind of the other things that you can do. And then briefly, we'll touch on, other resources that are available. That's resources that continue to grow. So templates from Salesforce and other people. So this is really where the storytelling started. So this video is still available today for free. It's is that 7 years old now? It's getting old now, but it's still, I think, quite relevant. Does need an update, but that was me and Don Robbins recording the play-by-play, and Don's a great guy for getting to what it is that you're doing and why it is that you're doing that. So if you want to have a look at my terrible handwriting, there'll be a QR code at the end, but there's a bit.ly link there as well. And then this was the live diagramming. This is on my kitchen wall. I was preparing to sit the CTA review board along with Gemma at the time, so we recorded some of the prep that we were doing. And I was drawing it live, which I'm told is not the way to do it, but it was certainly fun. So what's the challenge? Well, whether it's in real life or if you're doing it for a test or you're doing it for fun, it's really about being able to take some pages of text, whether that might be a mock scenario, or it might be an RFP document, from a prospective customer. Or it might just be the outputs from a workshop, and you want to be able to process the information that you've been given, which will be in a narrative form, and be able to turn it into some tools that you can use to progress the conversation. So in terms of extracting and structuring the information that you're given, it then allows you to validate that with the people that have told it to you, and then communicate it more widely. And you can do it for what we call the as-is state, so how things are now. And you can also then use it to paint a picture of what could be built, with Salesforce and other tools if you go ahead to the solution. So from an extraction point of view, there's a technique that I still use today, and I vary it from time to time, but the principles remain the same. You're really looking to gather some key facts out of the document as you go. And ideally, particularly if it's a large RFP, you don't want to have to keep reading it or going back and trying to find, the paragraph that mentioned the information that is relevant. So if you know what you're looking for, and this is the framework I'll give you, as you go through, you can then note these things down. So first thing you're looking for is the actors. So this is anybody that's going to be using the system or maybe receiving outputs from the system, have some kind of an interaction with the system as a whole. It's also going to relate to the licenses that might be needed for the Salesforce aspects of that solution, or indeed even for other technologies. So in the example here, taken from the scenario that I wrote for Unified Power, we see that they've got front office users and external sales agents and operations managers, etc. And then what I use as a technique is, in brackets, I put the license that I think they're probably going to need. Now that doesn't stay forever, but it's my first guess of what the license is going to be. If it's an internal user and they're going to be using Service Cloud or Sales Cloud, they're going to need a full Salesforce license. If it's somebody who's not an employee of the company, but a business partner, they might need a partner community license. If it's a customer, they might need a customer community license. So in that way, you can start to build up a picture of, okay, what products and licenses are we going to need? You can do the same with the systems, and you can also capture, what's the status of that system? So is it going to need to be replaced? Is it going to be new? Is it an external system that we don't control? So it could be a third-party service that we're making use of. And as you go through, you're looking for mention or indication even. Sometimes, it's very explicit. Other times it's quite subtle. But anything you can do to note down external parties or external systems and, the interaction you're going to have with them, then you won't need to go back and reread it again. Then you're looking for the Salesforce objects. So this is the thing that, takes more experience. Somebody brand new to Salesforce would probably struggle to do this, but anybody that's, done a few projects and, spent a couple of years in the Salesforce world, quite well how accounts, contacts, opportunities, cases, etc. are used within Salesforce, and what's the way to get the best value out of them. So as you read through a document, you can spot a process that's going to be well served by a case. You can spot a piece of information which is going to need to be modeled as an account of some type, whether that's representing a family, or perhaps it's going to be a business. All of those things, you can capture down. And you're also looking as well for an indication of how much data there might be. So when they mention customers, maybe they say they've got 100,000 customers and it grows 10% per year. These are really important things to note down, because they'll give you an idea of how many records are going to be stored in those objects. And then the last one for sure is noting down the integrations. Throughout my whole career, the one thing that is always difficult, always challenging, and if you're a specialist in integrations, you'll always have work. Integrations are even more important in the cloud world than they were in the on-prem world. So noting these things down, noting down the direction of which the integrations are going to need to take place. Is it one way? Is it two-way? Again, you're building up a picture in words that you can turn into diagrams very quickly. So the approach I take with this is to use one or several pieces of paper. So if you take an A4 piece of paper and you draw 2 lines across it, you've got 4 quadrants there you can note down. Sometimes there's going to be too much information for that, so go on to 2 different pieces of paper. But it really can be as rough as that. You can just make handwritten notes as you go. If you want to put them into a spreadsheet or into a document, absolutely do that as well. So once you've got your 4 lists, you can use your list to make 4 diagrams. So 4 and 4. And those diagrams are a data model, an entity with an entity relationship diagram, an overview of the system landscape to show the systems and the relationships between them, typically, an indication of the integrations. You'll need the Salesforce role hierarchy. So this is a very much a Salesforce specific type diagram, but it's so critical to the design of the sharing and visibility that you're going to need to, first of all, solution, but you're going to need as well to explain and validate to the stakeholders on the project. And the last one, which I think over the time that I've been doing this diagramming talk has become more and more significant, is your deployment architecture. So how are you going to implement a deployment strategy that is going to allow you to move through different environments and into production, but also do things like have accountability and traceability of requirements. So doing the job itself warrants its own picture. And then once you've got those diagrams, you can use them then to inform discussion. So, there are numerous stakeholders that are going to be involved in projects, whether it's a small or a large project, and also, a different scenario that you might be in. So you might be looking to look at the difference between how things are today and how they might be in the future. So that's a playback of, okay, this is what you've got today, the as is, and, this is the kind of how the solution is going to look in the future. And we just want to check this is going to do what you want it to do in the to-be state. It might be that you want to agree the vision with the project sponsor. So really looking to understand what is their vision for the business and how is this technology that they're going to ask you to architect for them. How's that going to drive the success that they want to see in their business? And it could be day to day as well. So things like enhancing existing solutions or specifying integrations. It might be your onboarding new team members as well. Having a picture of how things are today for a meeting, for a discussion that you're going to have with an administrator or a developer is really, really useful. And so when working on projects, I certainly keep an up-to-date copy of each of the diagrams to hand, either as paper, more in the past, but more typically these days on my laptop, so that it can be used. Even if I didn't plan to be having that meeting and talking about these topics, if you've got a picture, it's always a very good way to make sure that the conversation is going in the direction that you need it to and covering the topics that you need covered. So there's a few more examples there, but hopefully you get the idea. And really keeping those diagrams up to date, in addition to always being in your pocket for a meeting, it also helps to enrich the process and the conversation that you're having. So diagrams are very efficient. You can use the same diagram with different groups of people, so they can be highly technical or they can be much more business orientated. But some of these diagrams are equally usable without any changes for a wide range of audience. Two of the other things I think I would call out is uncovering hidden requirements. I've got an example in the slides a little bit later on about that. But when you put things down on paper, it certainly increases clarity. If you have it in a picture, I think the old saying is that picture speaks 1,000 words. It's possible sometimes for you or other people to spot relationships or gaps that nobody had thought about before. And I think the other one is it's always a good way to keep a version history of what were we thinking 6 months ago. You could certainly go back and read documents or user stories that were created at that time. But sometimes it's very expedient to refer back to a previous version of a diagram to see what changed between now and that time in the past. And the reason for that is that you can really get a lot of information in a short amount of time, because diagrams are very efficient. They provide really just enough information, and you can use that information to drive decisions and inform choices. So let's have a zip through these 4 diagrams. So the data model, for those of you, I'm assuming as architects, you're somewhat familiar with data models and entity relationship diagrams, but it shows not only how the objects are related, but you can also include on there information about the record types and owners that you might have. So that's something that's much more Salesforce specific, than it might be if you were working just a standard SQL database. Likewise, the sharing and org-wide defaults, and you can also indicate objects which you think have large data volumes. How do you know they have large data volumes? Because when you were capturing, you noted down the estimated number of customers or the estimated number of orders, and you can use that to infer that information. Role hierarchy is going to help us see the difference between internal and external users, and you can also then mark up the object owners on there, and then in that way you're relating the role hierarchy to the data model, so you can validate that you're going to have the visibility that you need to provide, and only the visibility you need to provide as well. And you can avoid sharing too much and having too much of a open visibility. Record ownership, of course, is a key, is a fundamental aspect of how Salesforce implements sharing and visibility. So knowing who the owner is really, really important. And you can also use this diagram as well to describe any additional sharing that you might be adding in. So criteria-based sharing rules, for example. System landscape is a very useful tool, and as we'll see in a few minutes, there's not one way to draw this, but it tells people so much. It really is the big picture of how Salesforce is a part of the overall technology estate, and how things like data integrations are going to happen, how access and authorization is going to happen from a security point of view. And also how it interacts with different types of systems, whether they be in the cloud or on-prem. And then, as I've said before, the deployment and testing, really is vital to explain to people, about Salesforce sandboxes, for example. But also, if you're working in a system of, or in an overall system, an overall enterprise of different systems. So maybe there's some AWS, maybe there's some Oracle, maybe there's some SAP. You can start to also help them understand how they need to link those environments up in order to be able to support end-to-end journeys. So, as I say, this becomes more and more significant, and has a number of uses. So, with apologies to those who know correct notation, PowerPoint, which is what I tend to use day to day to produce diagrams, does not have any crow's feet. So, unfortunately, it's a bit of a munge, but there are better tools out there now, like Lucid, that will do it properly for you. So, but here's a zoom in on one of those objects on our data model, just to show you how you can use that box, you can use the white space in that box to really pack in the information that you can use as an architect in order to be able to, inform yourself about how different objects are going to behave and how they're going to relate, but also be able to communicate it to other people. So, for example, in the top left-hand corner, you can put, the sharing or wide default. So, is it private? Is it public read-only, et cetera, et cetera. In the top right, you can put the number of rows. You can sort these around if you want. That's just the convention I use. And in the bottom left, you can put as well the role of the owner. So don't put it's going to be user X is the owner of the record. What we really want to know is what is their role? What is their role in the role hierarchy? And the same goes as well. If there's going to be an external owner, maybe the records themselves within there are going to be owned by different users throughout the life cycle of a record. Then you can put in two values there as needed. And so if we layer that on, we start to get a much richer picture of how Salesforce will behave if we relate our objects like this. And one example of that is spotting objects with lots of records. So in this scenario, we read in text that there was going to be 500,000 opportunities per year, and each that's when I have to get my numbers right, but there would be multiple line items per opportunity. So doing some simple mathematics, you can then see, I think it was like 100 times. Yeah, I think it was 100 times. There are 100 records per. You start to see that you end up with 50 million opportunity line items in this example. And so that's highlighting to us that we need to have a conversation as well around data management and think about archiving those records after a period of time. So from an architecture point of view, it opens up a new line of investigation as to how we're going to factor that into our solution. So with our role hierarchy is kind of funny in Salesforce. Well, it's peculiar to Salesforce, but it's quite kind of funny because it's a mixture of structure and data. So you can't draw an abstract role hierarchy. You've got to actually put some values in there, but you don't need to draw verbosely the role hierarchy. So if you've got a role hierarchy that models a geographic territory, for example, and the East Coast and the West Coast, if you want to take a classic American example, or perhaps it's by country in Western Europe, you don't need to do that per country. You can just put an example country on your diagram and then say, it's going to be the same for the Netherlands as it is in Germany. So once you've built that structure up, you can also then add in some color or some annotation to indicate which roles are going to be external. So, if those are going to be a partner community. And you can also indicate any sharing that's going to happen and put a comment as to, what's going to be used there. So, is it going to be role-based sharing? Is it going to be criteria-based sharing? And then this is where you can use the two diagrams together because you've been alerted in your data model that there is an object that has a large amount of volume, a large amount of records, so has a large data volume. And you can see from the role hierarchy that some custom sharing is required. So there's going to be, let's say, a criteria-based sharing rule. What that means from a Salesforce implementation point of view is that's going to need to create lots of share records, and that can slow down performance in terms of queries, and it can also cause a bit of a maintenance headache in terms of rebuilding that if the object owner is going to change. Now, that's only going to be relevant if the sharing settings are controlled by parent or not. So in this example, with a standard object, we're probably going to be all right because opportunity line items are controlled by parent. But if it was a custom object in the parent-child relationship, then that's something that we would need to pay attention to make sure that we weren't going to run into issues once we've got further into development. So system landscape, this is kind of an older way of how I used to do system landscapes. I don't go into this much detail now. And I think that's really just my experience has been less detail is easier for people to get their head around the bigger picture, if you follow. But back in the day, I certainly included a lot of information here, and you can mix and match this as your need requires. But certainly from a systems point of view, we're interested in those main systems. And this is very much a Salesforce-centric, view of the world, very much like you have with maps. Depending on where you live, if you live in Europe tends to be at the center. It tends to be sort of an Atlantic projection. If you live in Australia, it's a very different view, and that's also true from the Salesforce. My experience in Salesforce, typically Salesforce gets put at the middle of the diagram. Not everybody sees it that way. But we put Salesforce in there. We talk about the clouds that are perhaps going to be involved. We indicate whether or not it's going to be there's going to be communities involved. I think something else that's evolved over time as well is how we describe Marketing Cloud. So in this example here, we've got a generic marketing automation, but these days, if that marketing automation is provided by Marketing Cloud, I tend to cluster that much more closely with core Salesforce. Just really for the simplicity of the storyline. So even if it's not technically accurate because it's not integrated on the same platform, there is an integration that is needed. From a customer's point of view, they think that's all Salesforce. So there's an element of storytelling that goes along with this, and I think the system landscape is one where using your discretion and using your judgment to put on the detail that you need to tell the story is really, really useful. Got some annotations on here in terms of what's going on with the arrows. So in some examples here, we've got authentication flows going on. So single sign-on with OpenID. There's a purple arrow there indicating that we've got a data load happening, so it's more of a one-time thing. Also got an annotation there for OData as well. So if you're using Salesforce Connect, indicating that we're making use of that feature can be a useful thing when you're talking it through with stakeholders. I think the last thing I would mention as well is around the significance of firewall. This approach has saved me a couple of times. And again, it's where pictures are more powerful than words. So those of you familiar with projects where you've had to integrate with systems which are in the customer's own data center, so what used to be called on-prem, I don't think anybody keeps anything on their premises anymore. It tends to be an outsourced data center, but there will be a firewall involved. It's not the same as talking to another SaaS cloud system. And so when I do have systems that are behind the firewall, I draw the firewall across the boundary of the page. And if we've got an arrow passing that boundary, we know that there's going to need to be an IT and an InfoSec cyber conversation around getting that facilitated. So those things tend to take time. So being alerted to them early, is certainly really, really useful. And like I say, that's saved me a couple of times in the past. So as things evolve and over time, you can tell the story different ways. So here's what I call a better system landscape. This is from the last couple of years. And you'll see this is more of a architecture slide than a technical architecture slide. And I think my experiences with SaaS products and Salesforce particularly, having the ability to help people understand what it is that they've bought and how it will interact with other things sometimes is done in a different way from talking about exactly how the technical, how the underlying technology works. So if you are in that situation where you need to be explaining to people how all the bits of Salesforce are going to fit together. So in this example, I use the jigsaw as the way to express that. That tends to help them understand a lot better than separate boxes or just one large box that says Salesforce. So they start to understand, okay, I bought Sales Cloud, where does that fit? I bought Service Cloud as well. How does that work? How do those things work together? And then looking around the rest of the landscape, we've got telephony there with either Amazon Connect or Genesis, and talking about some of the things that happen there. So it's not now the OData and single sign-on being indicated there. It's more the functionality that's being expressed in terms of it's voice and IVR that's happening between these two system boundaries. But we also see as well we're receiving from the telephony platform sentiment information. So this is how perhaps in this example I was helping the customer understand how the features of Amazon Connect were going to be used to benefit their CRM. So very much a storytelling technique. So let's have a look at deployment. This is a kind of an older, clunkier version of this, but it serves multiple purposes because we can talk about the types of testing that takes place within each environment. We can talk about the sandboxes that are needed in each environment. So understanding from a licensing point of view, what sandboxes are required. Do I need a full copy? How many? Do I need, do I need Dev Pro that I can use for, particular aspects of testing, whether that be QA or systems integration? So this type of, diagram can be used to tell the story, also at a pre-sales stage, not just a project delivery stage as well. And then the last thing really is, I think DevOps, certainly with the arrival of DevOps Center within Salesforce, and it's very much now a DevOps first world with Salesforce. Took just over 20 years, but we're there. And certainly, the use of advanced packaging now, so things like unlock packages, can really help to extend the life of Salesforce systems. So being able to talk about how DevOps works in Salesforce and how that is similar but not exactly the same as other platforms, again, is really, really useful. And if you didn't like my ugly diagram, here's a much nicer one. So this one I use with permission from Melissa Shepherd, but telling the same story again, just in a more elegant way, talking about the sandboxes that are going to be used, how in this case there's going to be a CI/CD pipeline. In my previous example, it was the build manager that was going to do all the pushing and pulling, and then looking at how the code is going to flow through the branching strategy within source control in order to support the development, but also the business as usual support. So that's our 4 pictures, including the updates. I'll pause there if anybody's got any questions, and we can look at some other examples after that. How are we doing, Sarah?
Sure. One question from Pearly. This is referring to the development, testing, and deployment plus source control slide. How to draw that diagram? Which tool?
Well, I mean, you can ask that question for anything. So as you see, I use PowerPoint quite a lot, but that diagram did not look as good as this one. So I think this is probably done in Lucidchart. I don't think there's a template for this sort of stuff. This is just boxes and arrows. But certainly a Lucid or a Miro is going to draw a better diagram for you. If you're just trying to get stuff out of your head, or you're in a collaborative workshop, then pencil and paper, whiteboard, are really great ways to get the information out. You can make it look pretty afterwards. All good?
Yes, but
yes, I think that no. Go ahead, Sarah. I just want to add some tools to Matthew, because I used to use draw.io because it's related with your Google account. It's free, so you can use it to do the diagrams. Even if you want to do a draft, you can use draw.io. And also, I discovered this week that they add already all the Salesforce icons, so you have new libraries there. Sarah, please.
Yeah,
you share that.
I certainly need to update my materials. Yeah, and I think I'm always asked what's the best tool. I think my answer is that a diagramming tool is definitely going to give you a crisper diagram than just a PowerPoint. So some of the web-based diagramming tools, they really do look very nice. And then as you say as well, the ones that have provided the support for either the Salesforce diagramming framework, or added the icons, this just makes your job as an architect much easier, both from a creation point of view, but also from a maintenance point of view as well.
Yeah, Matthew, one question is about the Perlit. She say is the slide before that this, I think so. I don't know. Sure. No, the other one. Before this.
This one, my ugly one?
I think so. Pierce. Yes. This one. This is the referring to development testing and development source control. How to draft that diagram? This, I don't know, Miro, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, this was a very quick and dirty PowerPoint, but it's it's your knowledge or your facilitation of a discussion with the team, and then being able to visualize it. But the structure of these two diagrams, this one and the next one, are very, very similar. And that is following the framework as follows, which is you're talking about at the top the types of testing that happen, you're talking here in the middle about the different types of Salesforce sandboxes that would be used, or at the end, obviously, the production. And then in the lower level, we're talking about what is the DevOps approach in terms of the Git branching strategy. And then with the arrows, we're saying, okay, and how are the different branches related to the different environments related to the different sandboxes? So that's the story, if you like, and how you choose to represent it, whether you want to put it all on one diagram and whether you want to draw it on a whiteboard or, with a nice diagramming tool. You're really looking to show how information is going to be taken from one Salesforce environment in a sandbox, put into a source control repository, and then how that same source is then going to be extracted and put into a different environment so that it can either be reworked or so that it can be tested. That's really the story there.
Perfect. Yes.
Yeah.
So let's crack on for some more pictures. We're at 1:15. So, and then happy to take more questions as well, whether it's about deployment or anything else. So the four types of diagrams were the ones that were in the original Pluralsight video, and those are the ones that I was using most frequently. But there's also a lot more out there. So we've got sequence diagrams. So sequence diagrams are very useful for talking about how a series of steps is going to be executed in what order and involving what people or what systems. So really good examples of that are, you'll see sequence diagrams used to illustrate how different SAML or OAuth flows work from a authentication and authorization point of view. I didn't create this one, so with all of the best looking diagrams, they're never mine. This one's from Lawrence Newcomb at Cloud Sundial. So if you're interested in what are the accurate diagrams for how different types of login flows work, go over to cloudsundial.com. Lawrence has got it there. He reverse engineered all of the flows and then drew the diagrams up so they're accurate. Some of the ones in the documentation weren't accurate. That's what I'm going to say about that one. Capabilities. So I use capabilities more than anything else these days in my work, where I'm working in terms of transformation projects. Rather, before we can get down into the actual functional solution, we need to be helping the client prioritize what are the elements of Salesforce that they want to use, what are the business capabilities that that Salesforce brings, and then which ones do they need first in order to implement different journeys and business processes. So capability maps are very, very useful. This is one off the Salesforce website, and you see they grouped it by cloud, which again, from a consultancy point of view, from a discussion point of view, perhaps in a workshop environment, can be very, very useful, because a lot of times, even today, customers are very new to Salesforce and they hear, oh, I bought Sales Cloud. What does that mean? Where you can start to show them, some things around business capabilities that they'll be more familiar with and will have more meaning to them than just a product name. And there's an even better example of that. So this is a resource that's available online in, was it Prezi? Yeah, Prezi. So this was created by the enterprise architect team at Salesforce. And they've got capability cards for all of the major clouds, including some of the industry's clouds. And I used to have to kind of make this sort of stuff up, at every different client that I would go to. I don't do that anymore. I just refer to this. So from a Sales Cloud point of view, you'll see here the capabilities called out are account management, contact management, sales enablement, sales performance management. So these capabilities of Salesforce, which if you've implemented Sales Cloud, you're familiar with, they've been given a name, and you can use this consistent name. And if you go and have a look at that that Prezi and zoom in, you'll see that there's even more gold here, because if you take the capability of account management, they've even got a card there that talks about what's the functionality, what are the KPIs that can be influenced using this, by making use of account management capability within Salesforce. So from an architecture point of view, this is a very good halfway house between high level, abstract, systems solutions and low level processes. If we talk about the capabilities that somebody's looking to harness in order to solve their problem, it's very understandable by both the technical and a business audience. So this was a capability map I did. What year are we? 2023. So this is probably about 4 or 5 years old now. But this is where a mixture of color coding and layout can be used to show how over time we're going to evolve the system landscape for the customer in terms of how the capabilities are going to be organized. So our reddish pink, those are our legacy systems, Salesforce in blue, and the systems in yellow. What we're able to do is to talk about, in the 2B world, we're moving from a monolithic legacy CRM, which didn't need any integration. We've now indicated that we need to build a whole load of integration capabilities in order to make this multi-cloud system work. So it's going to be a Salesforce plus Zuora, I think. So very much a big change. And what you can do, and I use this with, I think the head of marketing and head of finance, was really to talk about how we were going to rearrange the systems from the point of view of thinking about the users that would use them, so the actors. And so you see that this is very much a architecture type picture, but from a communication and understanding point of view, these kind of techniques are really, really useful. So what we can do, and I'd spent far too long doing the animated transition, but you can show then how different actors are going to make use of different capabilities within Salesforce, and also indicate the gaps in the system. So there was a big hole around payments and billing, for example. We didn't have any systems for those. So again, you're able to use that to drive the conversation forward. And again, sort of swimming in the same direction as Salesforce, shall we say, putting the customer at the heart of everything, and then talking about, okay, how is the customer experience going to be influenced by the 2B architecture that we're going to create. Processes, so simple process maps, your basic flow charts, they get much more complex than this, but this is now getting down into lower levels of detail. And obviously you can do drill downs through this. There's various architecture frameworks which prescribe, how to do this well, but getting into those lower level of detail to the point where you'd be able to put that in a story, and go ahead and implement it and have the acceptance criteria, and the definition of done, all come out as it should do. But they don't all have to look like that. You can sort of do sort of a process map, which is sort of a mixture of a system landscape and a process flow. And I think in this example, I was trying to show how it wasn't going to be possible to get sub-second response in terms of the purchase journey. So when the customer clicked buy now, the end consumer clicked buy now, we were ideally wanting a sub-second response for that transaction to complete. But as we walked through here, I was able to explain that there was actually a 7 or 8 step process that was involved in doing that. And so we had to go back and look at how could we change the architecture, change the solution architecture to pre-position some shell records that could all be joined up. So again, you can use quite simple pictures in order to dig into technical problems with business stakeholders. What else we got? Logical landscape. So I showed this one earlier, but this isn't how it looks like in real life, but really, again, telling the story. And this is another one that's been very, very useful, which is channels and capabilities by function. So grouping those capabilities of Salesforce into logical business functions. So very much borrowed from the capability cards that we saw on the Prezi. We're able to do that, and then also relate it to the interaction channels across the top. So whether that's web, voice, chatbot, whatever, you can put that onto the landscape. And I think this is the last one. Again, another diagram that you can use in storytelling, and I've used this one, which is to build on that metaphor of here's the capabilities that we're going to make use of in Salesforce, but put that then on a timeline to say, well, it's really about maturity. We're not going to put in the the perfect opportunity and sales management system in just one sprint. It's going to take time, and so the capability is going to mature as we go forwards. We're going to focus on particular capabilities first and bring other ones in. So really, you can stretch those boxes out and use them almost like a Gantt chart to show how capability in different areas is going to be built up over time. You can give an indication of the sprints and the delivery squads that are going to be needed there. And then you can also then relate that back to stories and epics and features in terms of that, all packed onto one page. So if you're using that in a client presentation, it really helps you cover a lot of ground with just one picture. So a couple of years ago, Salesforce came out with their diagramming framework, now supported by some of the diagramming tools, as we've mentioned. Very, very useful. It means you don't have to come up with your own designs. You get that real nice professional, crisp look. You've got the proper crow's feet. It all works great. So all that information is available on the Salesforce Architects website. And I think there's 3 or 4 different tools now, I think, which support it. They've also got a reference architecture gallery. So again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you're looking for either your data models or examples of different scenarios, again, really useful reference there. And because they use the same notation and formatting, you can download those to Lucidchart, for example, and then add on your custom objects to it. So a great time saver, and it also looks quality. That's just a zoom in on one of those. And those of you who have used Lucid will know that. So, back in the day, we used to have to download the PDF from Salesforce, but now you can get a living, breathing data model, starter pack for Service Cloud or Sales Cloud, whatever it is that you want to use. They've got a couple of other formats on there as well. So they've got like their different levels. So you've got the big picture, and then the zoom in. So again, this is using a capability view that we looked at before, and then a process view. And as you'll see, again, it's not pure. It's really about a lot of the time telling the story when you're working with stakeholders particularly. So being able to use a mixture of icons to help bring to life the overall landscape or the overall process detail is really, really fundamental, I think. And they go down to 5 levels. Yeah, 4 levels. So I'll leave you with some resources, and it'll be time for a few more questions. So the Pluralsight video is still there. It's free. It'll still be free until whenever. Ladies Be Architects on the Ladies Be Architects website, and also YouTube channel. There's scenarios that you can use to practice with. Honestly, in terms of sitting down, print out the scenario, turn off your computer, and have a pencil and paper. At least that's what works for me when I'm looking to minimize distractions. And then once you've got those sketches, then you can digitize it into whatever your tool of choice is. And I think my final tip would be build your own library. So people often ask me, "Oh, can I have a copy of the diagrams?" To which I sound quite nasty when I say no, but they're my diagrams, and they're useful to me because I know where to go and find something that's looks similar to the diagram that I need to build today, you should start doing the same for yourself. It's much more productive. So by any means, take inspiration from what you've seen here and what you've seen from others. But I think now as well, with the starter packs from Salesforce and with the digital tools, it's really good just to keep a copy of stuff that you do, and start to build your own library. So that was it. So we talked about where this all came from. We talked about extracting, structuring, validating, and communicating, the 4 key diagrams, all those other lovely diagrams, and some of the stuff from Salesforce. And I saw as well that Sebastian Wagner at Flow Republic also has some templates, I think, on Lucidchart now as well, around diagrams. So that's more great assets for people to use. So definitely check that out as well. I think that's pretty much me done. So any more questions? I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all again.
I think at least in the chat we don't have any more questions. I don't know if you have any question, please.
Hello everybody. There you all are.
The chat. Otherwise, thank you so much, Matthew, for being here today with us, and thank you to all the people who joined. I really enjoyed all the meeting. I really love to do diagrams to explain myself all the time. So thank you so much again. And this event will be published in our YouTube channel. I think Sara shared already with you the channel, but stay tuned in the community.
Yeah, cool. Thanks very much for inviting me. And just feel free to give me a ping on LinkedIn. Anybody? I can see my friend Daniel's here. Hi, Daniel. It was really, really nice to see you all. So I wish you a good evening, and happy diagramming.
Thank you so much, Matthew. Really appreciate a lot of information, but amazing information. I think it's very helpful for everyone. So thank you again. I don't have questions. I don't know, everyone hears more questions.